Today I'm going to be joined by Missus Snarky to talk about Biblical Gender Roles blog, Does the Bible Approve of Forced Marriage? Let's take a look. Biblical Gender Roles. Does the Bible approve of forced marriage? In Genesis 24:50-51 and Genesis 29:15-19, the Bible speaks approvingly of fathers who forced their daughters to marry men they had just met without asking their opinion. In Deuteronomy 21:10-14, the Bible allows for men to take captive women and force them to be their wives. Punctuation,
Yeah.
firstly.
Yeah. So one thing about this is it's kind of written in a way that makes you think that, that the Israelites were the only people doing this, when in fact, there's a whole culture in that area and even all over the world of arranged marriages, because it was a way to, for one, help out each other's families, and for two, to get some different, I guess, genetic material to, for the next generation, because you had like tribal societies and you had agricultural societies, and they were all just kind of like these city states, and they were tiny, so you had to like make arrangements for these things in order to survive. So it wasn't like just the Israelites that were doing this. We have to look at the context of what's going on when this is quote unquote written.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, and
And
the captive women thing, it was the same. This was something that happened across cultures.
yeah, and as will be coming more apparent later on, even the men didn't have any choice in much of the
Right,
instances, because, as you
right,
were saying, arranged marriages, they had what was known as peace cows, where a noble's son and a noble's daughter would marry to bring peace between two warring factions.
right.
And that's continued up until the late 18th century, especially with the British royal family.
Oh yeah, any monarch, any monarchical society is going to go to another monarchical society that they've been at war with, like England, France. Well, there's your famous one right there.
Yeah.
Or, Norway, things like that, in order to establish peacemaking. Sometimes it
Well,
worked, many times it didn't.
yeah, I mean, the most recent one I can think of is Queen Elizabeth II with Prince Philip.
Hmm.
He's of the
Definitely.
Greek royal family, um, and the Greeks were, without going down Godwin's law lines, they were familiar with the Nazis. They um, applied some, not all, of the ideals that they had. So
Right,
it's rarely common still, but it's not biblically led, it's politically led.
right.
Uh,
And politics, I mean, in the times of old, was everything. It was your livelihood. It was whether or not your entire family was wiped out or your nation was taken over. So it was an important establishment back then.
yeah,
I don't know if the author of this has noticed, but we're in 2020 now, and this is obsolete. As far as, I mean, we don't have to do this in order to establish political peace, or for a woman or a man to make it in life,
yeah,
for any individual to make it in life.
yeah. And the people that wrote this book would have been educated. They would have been aware of neighboring nations and tribes. And when you have the rise of goddesses like Ishtar,
Mm-hmm.
who are very feminine dominant, uh, relatively equality minded, and you're in a society which is driven by male dominance, to reassert that, how do you do it? Do you just kill all the women and then end your tribe? Or do you say, no, our God says this is wrong?
Right. Well, you have to have some kind of divine approval. So if your God is saying, hey, you go over here and you wipe out the men and take the wives, then not only are you establishing your dominance in that area, but also the dominance of that religion.
Yep.
And what you kind of have with a lot of that world did have matriarchal kind of goddesses going on at that time. And this was a really big source of contention between this culture that is writing in the Bible, the scholars of that culture, and the peoples that surrounded them. They wanted to be completely different and they wanted to dominate in order to get rid of that and establish a more widespread patriarchal society. And I hate to admit it, but they succeeded in that.
Oh, massively. We're still suffering from it today.
Yeah.
I don't know about in America, but here in the UK, there's a relatively small proportion of female voices within Parliament, but they
Yeah.
make up nearly 50% or just over 50% of the population.
Oh, yeah.
It's a serious disparity. There's disparity in representation.
Oh, definitely. In recent years, our numbers have gone up, but I think the last time I checked, I think the representation was around 25 to 30%. So, and as you said, women are, are the majority. Like we're
Yeah.
about 51% of the population here. So
I
definitely
think,
underrepresented.
yeah, I think in your lower house, as close a representation of society after 2018, when
Yes.
AOC and all the rest of them came in.
Oh yeah,
So,
definitely. That was
right.
wonderful.
Oh, I love AOC. She's an amazing politician. Um, so, the next part. The passages I just cited have been used by those who hate the Bible and hate Christianity to call the Bible an evil and immoral book. Most Christians do not even want to talk about these passages, and when some Christians do talk about them, they try and soften these passages or explain them away entirely.
Now, why would they do that?
Well,
See, it's almost as if you read it and you don't have to be an atheist or anything like that to see that this is number one, outdated, and number two, I don't really want to use the term evil, but immoral will work in terms of how I would describe this practice in the context of our lives now. Back then, even I would say, hey, this is not right. However, I do understand that these are people that were struggling to keep their populations growing. So it's kind of like I can't hate them, even though this person apparently thinks I hate these people and I hate the Bible and I hate Christianity. All kinds of assumptions are made in this paragraph, right? But I don't. Like, I understand it, but I do think it's wrong.
yeah, I mean, I think what also they've done is used evil in a very loose way. If you take the problem of evil, what it's actually referring to is suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Man-made suffering may be able to be explained away with free will, but natural suffering can't.
Right.
So with this, I think it's actually referring to man-made evil, as in um, forcing someone to do something against their will. I think that's what it's referring to. And if that is the case, I can say the Bible is evil because it is advocating for people to do against what they want to do.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like I said before, in the context of them struggling to keep their population, you
Yeah,
have to have kids to work the farms, to milk the goats or whatever, and So it was very important for them to keep their population going so they could survive together. So it's not only this kind of thing going on where you have man-made evil, but you also have circumstantial, what do you call it? Suffering,
Yeah.
right? To that puts you in a situation where you feel compelled to do said man implemented evil. I
Yeah.
cannot speak, and I'm sorry.
Oh, I normally have this problem. However, I have coffee, and that helps a lot.
I had 2 cups and just didn't do it. Didn't do it today. Oh
Ooh,
well.
you should have just got the jug and down that instead.
Yeah. Give me an espresso.
So yeah, I mean, I think you do make a good point and a very, very valid point. But the way these first 2 paragraphs have been put, as if
Yeah.
it's only women that don't have a choice. Men
Yeah.
also don't have a choice to marry.
Yes.
So
Agreed.
although that's not right, it's not good. At least it is even. Um, there is no one better than another. It is, well, with the exception of the captive women.
Yeah.
But in the 2 passages that have been cited that I'm thinking goes into later, it is even if you take his word, because neither man nor woman had an option of who they were marrying.
Yeah. There's that, and there's also the idea of repercussion, right? Because
Mm.
if, say, you're a tribe of men who take over a city and you kill all the men and everything else, all the dogs and everything, and take the women, now you're in a vulnerable position to where, if anyone does escape, which is possible, then, some other city can do the same to you. So as men, you put yourself at risk for being killed yourself and the women taken back or taken by some other city or tribe.
That
So
includes your own
it's,
daughters, your own mothers, and all the rest of
yeah,
it.
yeah. So it's just, it's a really terrible situation for everybody involved, and the elders are seen as closest to God, I guess, because patriarchy.
Yep.
They're supposed to be older, wiser, stuff like that. So, and they're the head of the paterfamilias, right? They're the head of
Yep.
the family. So they get to make these choices and no one else does. And that's not fair, right? Obviously.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's a very good point that you make there in terms of it not being good for men and women.
Yep. Moving on. The
Hey,
reason, oh, it gets better. The reason that such passages of scriptures as the ones above are appalling to our modern American values is because of the false religion of egalitarianism.
wait,
And yeah,
wait,
go.
wait, wait, wait. Now, I have so many questions, right? Okay, in this supposed religion of egalitarianism, who is the god or goddess that we're following? Is it like a polytheistic religion? Is it, I mean, we haven't really established, we've just thrown out some words here that have a deeper meaning than what is implied in the writing.
Well,
You know what I'm
he.
saying?
I'm assuming this is a he. Um,
Well, yeah, of course it was.
um,
You see a woman writing this, or someone who's non-binary, or gender fluid writing this. I
um,
don't see that.
have you not heard of the Reformed Wife? Is it Reformed Wife?
Heard of, not too familiar, but I've heard of. Okay, so there might be outliers. Okay,
Yeah, there are a
but
couple of outliers, but as a rule, I'm confident this is a man.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. So why is it a religion? And if it were a religion, why would it be false? And based on what premise?
Oh, the
There's just so
premise.
much wrong with this.
They never go into the premise, is it? And it says at the center of egalitarianism is the god of equality. Equality is a god.
Equality is an idea. It's a principle.
An idea to strive for.
So it's not an entity. Is this person of the idea that actual principles are like something that can be embodied like by themselves?
I think the closest we could compare it to is pantheism.
Okay.
Where the idea of a universe is God destroyed itself to create the rest of us. Cross that with deism, maybe.
Well, if that be the case, then there is no case to be made against egalitarianism because it would be part of the pantheon. So I think it's just like we're taking an idea and we're anthropomorphizing it in order to attack it. It's kind of like when you build a straw man and then you burn it down. That's what this is.
It's exactly the same as theists of various denominations saying, "Oh, atheists' God is Christopher Hitchens. He's atheist Jesus." You know, that kind of scenario. And then our Pope is Dawkins, deGrasse Tyson, Krauss. You know, all the hideous people.
Of horrible people.
Yeah.
Christopher Hitchens was just in it to sell books. I mean, he was very entertaining and he did have good books. I really liked Mortality. It was good. It was difficult to get through. But like he was a shitlord and he was just in it for the money. Like,
yeah, I mean his ideas of feminism in some ways were actually relatively progressive, you know, give women the rights over their own bodies, you know, and you will reduce poverty. Brilliant idea. Yes. However, then he turns around and says female comedians are just shit, all of them, which is blatantly not true.
I'm not funny, but somehow he comes out and he's like, well, that's not what I said. Okay, honey. All right, it's fine. I think I'm funny. I mean, my husband steals my jokes and puts them on Twitter all the time. So.
Yeah. And you really need to point them out even more because it makes the jokes even funnier.
Yes, I think so. But yeah, this is just, you know, personification of an idea. And I think that's not something that an honest person would do if you're talking about an idea, then fine, be honest about it, but you don't have to mischaracterize it as a religion. And even if it were a religion, so what? You don't have a good point.
Well, you're more philosophically minded than me. So there are some qualifiers that have added to that. And I want to know whether they actually do lie in the realms of egalitarianism. So one of the false god's primary doctrines is that of bodily autonomy. The god of equality demands that his subjects believe that they can do whatever they want with their bodies. In fact, he demands total equality, not just of opportunity, but of outcomes.
Now, see, this isn't entirely true, because if I did whatever I wanted with my body, like I risk being unhealthy. You have to do things with your body that are good for your health and well-being. Otherwise, it would be immoral. Like, if I just decided to eat donuts every day, all day, and that was my diet, that would not be healthy for me, right? So there are some limits to what he's putting forth. It always gives me pause, right? When somebody says, they use qualifiers that like everything or whatever, or, total
Yeah.
equality. um, that gives me pause, and it makes me feel like whoever is speaking about this is not either well informed on the subject, or they're just trying to be really too general with the subject that has a lot more complexity than what they're speaking about. And when it comes to equality, it definitely, there is a lot of complexity to be had, because it's a social issue and socio-political thing. And politics and sociology are both very complex, and when you put them together, which they often are, it is a whole plethora of just, you got to sort through the muck. Okay. And there is no qualifier that every, or, whatever we want, or, things like this that can be applied to it. It's just not that simple. If you're trying to simplify it, again, you're not being honest.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I think what they've done is they've used almost a bait and switch or a Mott and Bailey fallacy. They've given us something which is or could be deemed as true, i.e., primary doctrines is that of bodily autonomy. Yes,
mhm,
bodily autonomy is important to equality because, for example, if we were in a Muslim country, equality would be that you would not have to wear a burqa, for example. Where I don't, I can go out shopping whenever I feel like it, but you'd have to wait for Maddie to come home to go shopping.
yeah, right.
So that is part of the bodily autonomy aspect of it. But then, as you say, to be able to do whatever you want with your body, you can, but there are still repercussions from it, both health and socio-political, as you said. You
Yeah,
can't run for Congress if you weigh half a ton. It's just not
right,
feasible. So,
right.
yeah, mm,
And also, when it comes to egalitarianism, one thing that is often uh, overlooked is, are you qualified? Okay. So,
yeah,
another reason why I wouldn't be able to run for Congress is I don't have the qualifications, right? So, I can't just do what I want because I don't meet the certain criteria that is necessary to be able to perform my duties in that kind of setting. So again, it's there's a whole lot of muck to sort through when it comes to this. With bodily autonomy, it's true that it's very important to have that autonomy. But one thing that is very um, it ends at the tip of your own nose, right?
yeah,
It's like we have the mask mandates that people are losing it over, right? We should wear masks during this COVID pandemic, because within the droplets and things that are coming out of our mouth and noses, we are infecting people, whether or not we are symptomatic or asymptomatic. So I can't just walk around coughing all over people, right? I mean, I could,
yeah,
but it would not be the right thing to do. So again, it it's complex in terms of
yeah,
morality. And it's not just, oh, I can do whatever. No, I can do whatever I want with my body. I have autonomy over my body within reason.
yeah, absolutely. And when you said your own um, autonomy ends at the tip of your nose,
Mhm.
and the other way to look at it is your autonomy to swing your arm ends just before it hits my nose.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. That's a very good, apt way of putting it.
yeah. Um, so the last part of that paragraph is Any freedom that does not include total equality is not a freedom that should be allowed according to the God of equality. This God is actually willing to sacrifice true freedom as Christianity understands it to his end of total equality. A
I'm
couple of
gonna
things
need a
about that.
dictionary.
Yeah, a couple of things that bothered me about that paragraph. If it's equality, why did this author always refer to this God of equality as he, not they, she,
Hmm.
it, at, one, many, any other word that you can
Probably
think of?
because probably because their idea of authority is patriarchal. It just is. And that's another hint that this is a man that wrote this. It's just, but eh, one thing I'm wondering about is this true freedom as Christianity understands it. Now, this is a sign of really poor authorship, in my opinion, because it just ends there. Like
That's the point.
there's absolutely no explanation as to what that means. What is true
That's
freedom as Christianity understands it?
that's the point. It's written for Christians. It's for then the Christian to put in their understanding of true freedom of Christianity as they understand it.
Well,
It's meant to be non-specific.
Christianity isn't a monolith either. There are
That's the
Christians that
point.
have total different ideas. Eh, More dishonesty,
Oh,
just more
absolutely.
dishonesty.
So if it was NIFB or Westboro Baptist Church that were reading this, their understanding of Christianity would be completely different to a Methodist or a Catholic.
Mm.
So the NIFB would put in their definition, Catholic could put in their definition, and Methodist would put in their definition, so on and so forth, until there's 3,000 different denominations with different
Uh,
definitions.
who can keep up, really? Who can?
So it's meant to speak to as many people as possible.
True. Like the Barnum thing,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Uh, I just want to go forth and say, I want to go forth, put it out there that I do not wish to know what the NIFB's definition of true freedom is. Okay?
Do as I say or else.
Oh, well, that's kind of on par with this article. So,
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, I'm
Very,
guessing there's so much ambiguity. Who knows?
well, this is a conversation for another time, but NIFB have released a dating website. Just to join, you have to say which NIFB church you go to, and they will ring up your pastor and make sure you're in good standing in the community.
Oh, wow. Now that's true freedom right there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's what?
Well,
You got to be like, what do they call it? Whenever you have to have somebody like,
chaperone.
well, that's
No.
not chaperone. Like, if you have to be like verified or something like that as a contractor in order to work as one.
Okay, licensed.
Well, yeah, but you have to have somebody like vouch for you.
Oh, a
I
counter
can't think of
signatory almost.
I can't think of what
Guarantor.
it is. A
Like when you get a loan.
guarantor.
Yeah, when you get a loan, you
Yeah.
need a guarantor. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like that. That is weird. They're looking at relationships as capital. What do you think
Well,
about
women
it?
are capital to them. They are
Yeah.
still one of the few sects that still do dowry.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
That's
there's.
still a thing.
Yeah. Now, the dowry is often given back as a gift to the bride from the bride's father. and they've kept the tradition that way. So it might be a deposit towards a house, for example. You have to have
Right.
this much money to be able to do it. Which reminds me, when they ring your pastor, they ask what job you have to see if you can actually afford to keep a bride and a family.
Oh my God. These
So
people ain't
yeah,
kidding. They're not kidding.
no, they're really
Can
not.
you imagine? I mean, what if you thought this way? Like that feeling when I just
Yeah,
I can't imagine all the fuss that these folks have to go through for this belief. It's really sad to me.
when you're dating within that circle, it's not a case of you go to a dark movie theatre. You go to a well lit, well populated cafe or something like that. You don't go anywhere dark and dingy so you can do anything untoward.
Oh,
It's
darn it.
I know. It's,
This sucks all the fun out of everything.
I don't think that happens in their days.
That's fair. That's fair. None of that now. Would
Yeah,
that be considered spilling the seed or whatever?
I think you'd be sowing it in the wrong hole. Another false doctrine of egalitarianism is something I addressed in my article. It's not a woman's consent that matters, it's God's. And this false doctrine of sexual consent ideology has poisoned our society's view of sex. Any thoughts?
There's a link there.
Yeah. Would you like me to click it?
No, please don't. Please don't do this. Like I thought, should I click it? And I thought, no, I never want to click that. Never gonna click that link. Not gonna happen. This is so backward. This is absolutely backward. And I bet you 100 pounds that this dude thinks that there's no rape culture.
Yep. I did click on the link. I am that much of a masochist.
Did your head explode? It looks intact.
Going through it, I read parts of this blog to my partner, and I clicked on that link and I started reading parts to the other one. They threatened to rip particular parts off my body if I didn't shut up.
I see.
Yep.
I see.
And what I have to say to that particular blog is, the only person's body you have the right to fuck is your own. You don't have rights on someone else's body under any circumstances. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. I have nothing else to add. You've said it all. Jesus.
Yes, I actually like this next part, but for not the reason they expect.
Oh yeah? This ought to be good.
Since the rise of egalitarianism in America and some of its evil children, the free love and feminist movements, we have turned the entire concept of intimate relationships between men and women upside down. Entering into marriage is no longer centered around the decisions of men, whether it be fathers deciding to give their daughters in marriage or husbands deciding to take a woman in marriage, but rather marriage now centers primarily on the decisions of women. This change of human civilization over the last 1.5 centuries cannot be understated. So, egalitarianism in America and some of its evil children. Really?
It's like the children of Lilith, the Lilith children.
Uh, Lilith is awesome.
Egalitarianism.
Yeah, I mean, free love.
Egalitarianism came down as a swan and had sex with the women, see, and then had the free love and feminist children that corrupted everything. See, that's
Is that
anyway.
when Uncle Stork? Is that where Uncle Stork delivers the feminist movement?
Yes,
Okay.
pretty much, or Zeus, whichever. I mean,
Both work. But this free love is predominantly attributed to the 60s, where people are having sex but not getting married. You know, drugs, sex, drugs, rock and roll, and all that crap. The thing is, in the old world, before the Mayflower and all the rest of it, people couldn't afford the fees to the church to get married. Therefore, they were living free love as it was. So the last century and a half, get a fucking grip.
Scandalous. This is fake news. This has got to be you're a globalist and you're a Soros shill. That's just the only explanation.
I was, but I've been waiting like 36 years for my check, so sod him.
Yeah. It's kind of slow. I mean, I haven't gotten mine yet either. But one thing that really jumped out at me with this is how he talks about we have turned the entire concept of intimate relationships between men and women upside down. And I just can't help but wonder if he's talking about women being on top, because I just can't help it. That's just where my mind went.
Well, you've got that. However, the man can still be on the top. However, the husband is sat in the corner watching.
Oh, well, that's Jerry Falwell. That's how he likes to do it. Yeah. The pool boy will testify to this. Oh,
I think he already tested something. However, if that's what they enjoy, who are we to criticise for that action? The hypocrisy, on the other hand.
Yes. Exactly. Like, I could see somebody in the Falwell family writing an article like this, or at least something similar, maybe not as toxic. Maybe as toxic, who knows? But they're going out and they're doing the very things, if not even more deviant sexual behaviors than what is mentioned in the article. And that is hilarious, but also disgusting, because if you're going to do that, then just accept yourself. Accept that's who you are. Like, and you have absolutely no right to judge other people on what they do, as long as what they're doing is consensual and, not, yeah, well, I mean, some laws are still on the books, like they have sodomy laws in Texas still, as far as I know. So, I mean, yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I withdraw that.
As long as you're not harming someone else,
and the person is able to give informed consent as well.
Right.
That's the bit I was aiming for.
Informed consent is very important. I'm glad you brought that up. But yeah, like, just be you, man. Like, stop. It's got to be really difficult to hold so much cognitive dissonance and repression within yourself. Like, just let it go, man. It's cool. Free love and all that.
I honestly believe I was born in the wrong decade.
Me too.
I was born in the mid-80s, and I would have loved to have been maybe not my age now, maybe 10 years younger at the time I was born. So I'd have had the tail end of the free love 60s through the disco 70s and actually be able to express myself in the rocking 80s.
True, but your fashion sense would be horrible.
My fashion sense is horrible now.
Oh, well, I mean, it could be worse. You could have those collars, and the bell bottoms, and I still don't.
I
There's
do essentially have bell bottoms on now. I've got
You do?
boot cut.
Well, well, you're canceled. That's just all there is to it. I have to cancel you because the fashion
No,
police
I've got to go be a
are.
right wing chud now.
Hey, you'll make a lot of money.
Only if I eat a Quran.
Yeah, well, they are
Anyway,
delicious and full of fiber. So
yeah.
I do want to ask at least once, like, so how did that digest? I just need to know, how did that digest? Did it go down well?
Well, it depends. Depends
Oh,
on
you
which
need to
verse it
pin.
was. If it was a surah, that's close to sauce, so you had some kind of lubricant. But there's a lot of sharp words in there that could cut deep.
Ooh. I thought you were saying depends because it was just too fibrous and you had to wear like an adult diaper. But I mean, whatever.
Nah,
See, women aren't funny, so it's cool.
well, I'm just thinking he's got no problem with shitting himself.
Well, verbal diarrhea often spews from that one, so whatever.
Good point. Oh dear. Oh, where was I?
But yeah, one thing, it also talks about husbands deciding to take women in marriage, which still happens, right?
Yeah.
And this whole marriage now centers primarily on the decisions of women. That's not true necessarily. What is true still is the majority of the time the man will ask a woman to be their wife, and the decision of the woman is yes or no, but they're kind of making the decision together. And
Yeah, I mean, there's only one day every 4 years where it's becoming a modern tradition for women to take the charge and say, "Will you marry me?" For then the man to
yeah,
turn around and say yes or no. So once every 4 years, as a socially acceptable differentiation from the norm.
yeah.
So it's
And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with the woman asking a man, "Will you marry me?"
absolutely nothing as far as I can tell.
I,
I mean, it's the stigma is reinforced within movies and TV. In America, I believe it's common I can't remember if it's basketball or ice hockey to have a kiss cam where someone often proposes. And I remember in Friends, Phoebe proposed to Mike on the kiss cam, and everyone took the piss out of Mike because someone
I
was doing the proposing.
like,
And that's
why?
and that's just one example off the top of my head. I know there's many more, and it's ridiculous.
But toxic masculinity, total myth, right?
Oh,
Total myth.
yeah, yeah. Which brings us back to NIFB. If I
Oh,
was in their group, I would be shamed for having long hair because men only have short hair. They're clean shaven. They wear a suit and tie when they go to places rather than just being relaxed and being themselves. That's not toxic masculinity, apparently. That's just being a man.
ugh.
Ugh,
Well,
vomit.
it just seems to me that, you know, most of the time people that whine and complain about social justice warriors, the SJWs are destroying everything, seem to be extremely hyper focused on what is socially acceptable to them. It
Yep.
seems like projection to me.
Yeah, I mean, I consider myself a social justice warrior. I try and create a better world than I found.
Right.
And those that argue against me are also social justice warriors, just the other end of it.
Right.
Where's the problem? I
I
think
don't know.
this ethical route or moral route is the better one. You think this one. However, one of us isn't taking away the rights of others, the other person
Right.
is.
Exactly.
And I'm
And that's
sorry,
the
the right
moral
to be
difference.
the right to be an arsehole to people and the right to stop people doing things which means they exist is not the same as taking away rights to say they can't exist.
Right.
That's the disconnect that people like this blog writer just don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. And see, the thing is, like, you have a right to be an asshole. You do. Like, you totally have that right. And I also have the right to say, you're an asshole, and I don't want to associate with you, and I don't support what you stand for. And
Hmm.
if that's cancel culture, and you hate it, then where?
Well, oh god, cancel culture. This is another one I honestly don't get. A general person out in the street doesn't get cancelled. Oh, they would get cancelled, sorry. But if you've got a YouTube channel, if you own a shop, if you, whatever it may be, and you are accused of being cancelled, no, you are being boycotted. We don't want to use your service because of X, Y, or Z.
Mm-hmm.
There is a significant difference.
Yeah, definitely. And it all kind of boils down to, like, who has rights, the individual or the other individual and or institution that has to be answered, has to answer to a certain ethical guideline. Like,
Yeah.
I can't just take a shit in the middle of the street because there are problems with that. So it's the same thing if you're walking into, or if you're using YouTube, there are guidelines.
Yeah.
There are rules that you must follow because YouTube has its own ethical standards that you agree to when you sign on. So if they say, hey, look, you're not following our guidelines, and they give you warnings, right? And you continue to do that, they have every right to say, no, you are no longer welcome on our platform.
Yeah. Even employers,
Mm-hmm.
if I went out and got a job and it said in my contract, um, I can't advocate for or against religion. But then I start arguing with someone out in the street whilst on work's time,
Mm-hmm.
a priest, for example, for whatever reason, I was arguing with them, even though I'm generally civically within my rights to do so.
Mm-hmm.
The company is also within their rights to say, no, whilst you're on work's time, you entered into something which you have agreed you won't do.
Yes.
Therefore, you're dismissed. That's
Mm-hmm.
not cancelling, that's holding you accountable under the terms and agreements that you have signed on for.
Yeah. You agreed to it.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Anywho, I tend to go
Yes.
off on tangents.
Well, it's all
That's my thing.
related because, yeah, it'll become apparent.
Yeah.
Um, with that said, as an introduction, I will take a very different approach to these passages and the questions they raise than the ones you have probably heard from Christian teachers today. I will not try to hide or explain away these passages of the scriptures, but instead I will honour God's word in these passages, and in doing so shine a light on the evil doctrines of egalitarianism that the church has allowed itself to become infested with over the past century and a half.
Now, I thought egalitarianism was a god. Now egalitarianism is like cockroaches. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Um, Or maybe Yahweh's finally losing and egalitarianism's just buying up the house once he's gone bankrupt.
Maybe.
Especially in the Catholic Church, they're having to selling a lot. Same with JWs.
Yeah, they're not getting as much in the coffers. They're getting repoed.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Hey, you could house a lot of homeless people in them big old cathedrals. I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah. I remember when Notre Dame burnt down halfway, and people saying, yeah, brilliant, just knock it down and build something else. It's like, no, rebuild it, repurpose. There wasn't that much missing, and it would be cheaper to repurpose it from that stage than it was to knock it down and start again.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it was beautiful, okay? Say what you will about the church. A lot of those cathedrals and stuff like that, the really old ones, I believe they need to be preserved, kept up.
You have a really good point there. For centuries, the only people that had the money was royalty, nobility, and the church.
Yeah.
So they were the only three groups that were able to pay the artists to do the work. I mean, is it Michelangelo's David and not David? Well, David.
The Sistine Chapel?
Sistine Chapel with, is it God and Adam? That's an amazing painting. And
it is.
Yeah. Da Vinci's Last Supper. It's just...
Wasn't a lot of that funded by like the Medici and Florence?
Yes. But a lot of Da Vinci's work was financed by essentially the Catholic Church in Italy.
Wow.
Or like with
nice.
what it was some lord was given grace on taxes to the church because he was doing these other things. So indirectly it was financed, but that's from memory.
Yeah, I imagine they were also selling indulgences and, getting donations from people so they could get favor with the church. Because, of course, the church back then was powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, they still are in a way, but not like they used to be.
Not in the developed nations, with the exception of Italy and Spain. But when you look at Brazil, you look at Uruguay, Mexico, most African nations, Philippines, I think's hugely Catholic as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So huge swathes of the world are still dominated by the Catholic Church.
Wherever you have some kind of like vacuum of power, some religion is going to come in and establish their dominance. That's just either religious institution or group, kind of like
or religious thinking.
What happens in the Middle East? You have all these different factions of
I'd go further than that. I'd say even places like Cuba and China, Russia, instead of actually being a church, they deified the presidents.
Oh, Russia is a whole can of worms with religion.
Oh, yeah. When
Wowza.
Lenin came to power, he deified himself. He was still religious in some ways. Stalin really brings that home. He was God during the war. And yeah.
It's crazy for someone who was supposed to be a minister or was supposed to go into Russian Orthodoxy. Nope, I'll just be God. It's cool. To hell with you, Mom.
Dad, you said I'd do nothing with my life. Look at me now, I'm God.
Well, God died alone and pissing himself. So, there you go, Stalin.
I feel like that's
Enjoy
some mornings after a skinful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's anyway.
Oh God. Right.
Now that was y'all's history lesson. You're welcome.
Yeah. So,
Jesus.
forced marriages in the scriptures. First, we will discuss the concept of women being forced to marry men without first being asked if they consented to marrying these men. We will discuss two notable stories in the Bible that not only illustrate this concept, but show that God blessed it. The forced marriage of Rebekah to Isaac. In Genesis 24, we have the story of how Isaac and Rebekah became to be married. We read that Abraham was very concerned that about Isaac getting a wife, so he compels his servant to go back to his homeland, Aram, which is also called Syria, citation needed, to get a wife for his son Isaac. The servant sets a test before the Lord to show him which woman should be the one that he chooses for his master's son. Rebecca passes the test, blah, 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 blah. The problem with this passage is the servant sets the test and then to the family says, God did it. Just because Rebecca were a decent person.
I mean, it's totally logical. Really.
Yeah.
Just makes sense. It makes sense to me. I mean, I'm just going to take it as at its word. And one thing too, didn't her father give up the younger sister? Wasn't he like
that's the other
tricked
one
into? Oh,
that's another one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's I think Genesis 29, I think it is.
Jacob? It was Jacob, wasn't it?
Jacob, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Rebecca and Isaac's son, I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah, this one, it misses out quite a lot because it's only in the last sentence of the verse where it says the servant was traveling with armed soldiers. So I'm sorry, but back then you're a single woman on your own outside the village and there are armed men coming towards you asking for water. What do you do?
Yeah. I would probably run.
But they've got camels so they can chase you down. Chances are you've just taken water out of the well. They're only asking for water. So you provide it.
Definitely piss myself and then give them water. Yes.
Yes, I think I'd be doing the same. And then the passage goes on, they're discussing, the servants talking with the family. However, Rebecca says to the servant, come to my mother's house. Not to my father's house, to my mother's house. So to say it's a patriarchal society, and she's referring to it as a the mother's house, matriarchal house, it gives kind of a different spin on it when you look at it through the entire context.
Huh. So he's even taking the Bible out of context. A big surprise.
Yeah, and Rebecca also runs back to the house and sends her brother to get the servant to bring them to the house. Now, we all know how quickly whispers and things can travel. It would be known that Isaac, a relatively well-known person at the time, was looking for a wife. Rebecca is likely to know who he was. So, the culture of celebrities isn't anything new. A young woman wanting to marry essentially a prince is what I was brought up with, kind of the ideal, what every little girl wants.
Yeah, like a Cinderella story, right?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
So in that time that the brother's gone to get the servant, could the daughter not discuss things with the mother and father? Yes, I want to marry this man. I want to marry Isaac.
Indeed, that's a very good point.
And then when it comes back, I think this point is actually reinforced because yes, there's a bit of talk between the brothers, the fathers, the mother, and they ask, can our daughter stay for, I think it's 10 days, and then travel on to marry? And it says, okay, well, let's ask her. And she actually asked to go there and then, which reminds me of the, oh God, what is it? Not Lord of the Rings, the other one. Oh.
I don't know. My psychic powers are not working right
now. With the Mother of Dragons.
They're dragons. I don't.
Mother. Oh God, I can't believe I've forgotten what it's called.
It happens.
With Westeros and Sean Bean were in it. Oh God.
It's going over my head. I'm pretty sure that if you don't edit this out, somebody.
Oh, it's getting edited
out. We'll Google it. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. See, that's why I didn't get the reference.
Yeah,
I'm just not,
Well, this is a thing in Game of Thrones in the first season. You've got a Stark daughter that is meant to be marrying the king's son. The king's sons are a little shit, and she still wants to marry him. She only sees the good. She is the young Cinderella and wants to marry the future king.
Mm-hmm.
Could that not be the case with Rebecca?
It could, especially if you're looking, at a woman who is familiar with, she was in a well-to-do family anyway. She knows how political things are run. She knows how to kind of game the system. She knows what is best for, her future children. She wants to establish some sort of sense of security and power. Then, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and the passage also describes that her family is akin to Abraham and Isaac. Oh. In the context of the time, I don't know whether that's just from the same village or whether they were literally related. But if it's a small village, they could be both.
It could be both. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. If they, there wasn't dense populations, right? So
exactly.
You had people that it was slim pickings. You had to marry like a third cousin, or something like that. And especially if you were, well-to-do, if you were one of the few privileged families and you wanted to keep it in that family, then in order to preserve what you had to kind of arrange, cousins to marry and stuff like that, sisters.
So is gross, Alabama got a lower population then?
It's a little sparse. You got some of the densely populated places, but at the same time, there are places in Canada too that there's a really famous family up there that was outcast. I forget the name of them, but it was over there on the East Coast somewhere. But yeah, it happens. It happens. If you're an outcast or if there's not a whole lot of people, there are towns where everybody knows everybody and most of them are cousins. Hey, it happens. Yep. Arkansas more than Alabama, to be fair.
Arkansas.
Arkansas. Oh, don't ever say that to somebody.
For that. You can get arrested for that in Arkansas. You can get arrested for calling it Arkansas, and it comes with a $250 fine.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. See, I lived there for 3 years, so I could have been arrested numerous times. Oops. Yep. Good thing I was a kid.
Oh well.
I really got away.
Well, they only came in the late 90s.
Oh, well, it wasn't the late 90s, it was early 90s. I lived there, so yeah. That's funny. What's snowflakes? Anyway.
So the author goes on to say as you've just seen in the scriptures, Rebecca had no option. However, she was given some options. At no point was Isaac even made aware he was going to marry until the next chapter.
It's almost as if, and I know I've said this multiple times, but it's almost as if this author is dishonest and just is trying to find ways to, put forth their own little agenda here. Huh. Imagine my
thought?
shock.
Oh, colour me shocked.
Yes.
And I believe actually I've just said a lie. It's part of the same chapter where Isaac
But
finds out
later
he's
on,
marrying. Yeah.
Later on, yeah.
Around about 2465, I think it is. So,
see, I didn't do enough research for this. I'm sorry. I just I read some notes. That's about it. I was like, I'm not cracking open a Bible. You can't make me.
All I can say is thank you for Bible Hub. Otherwise, I wouldn't have cracked open a Bible either. But I was already here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get you there. I Bible hubbed a lot whenever me and Godless Eye, when we're doing our series, which I absolutely miss. It sucks, but then we're not continuing it. But when we were going over the Bible, that was fun. But I often use Bible Hub and I had one on a few of the episodes, but mostly it's Bible Hub. Anyway.
I like Bible Hub more because it gives you the choice of which version of the Bible you want to use.
Yes.
So it's all King James.
Right.
So I can look it up in King James if there's a particular phrase I'm not familiar with because it's in Old English. I can then look at, say, New International Version and actually get it in English.
Yeah, and you can have it side by side too.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
So the next one is the forced marriage of Rachel to Jacob, which we were mentioning before. Chapter 29 of Genesis, we read the story of how Jacob married Rachel, and again we see forced marriage illustrated. We do, but not in the way he's thinking. Laban said unto Jacob, because thou art my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? Tell me, what shall thy wages be? Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well favoured. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel thy younger daughter. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to thee than I should give her to another man. Abide with me. Now, what that's actually saying in that last sentence, I'd rather you married her than some complete stranger. You are my sister's son or whatever it is, Laban is. And he's missed out a bit there because before that, when Jacob first sees Rachel, they're out in a field where there's a lot of sheep. He runs up to her, gives her a kiss, and he's crying and loving and all the rest of it. He turns to her brother, gives him a kiss, but it's much more formal in its phrasing.
Right.
That's important for what's to come in a bit. Note here that Rachel's consent was never asked for by her father or by Jacob. A lot of Christian books try to turn Jacob and Rachel's story here into premarital romance, but nothing in the text paints this picture. They will point to this passage below when Jacob first meets Rachel as proof of their premarital romance. And it came to pass, when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. And Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted his voice and wept. Isn't it romantic? Jacob just comes up and plants one on Rachel to show his romantic affection for her. Oh, but wait, let's see who kisses Jacob right after he kisses Rachel. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother and that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father, and it came to pass when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. And he told Laban all these things. So the difference
he's
is,
trying to make it look like they just kissing everybody.
yeah,
right?
I mean, there is in Europe, particularly continental Europe, like France, there is the kissing of the cheeks when you meet people that are your friends, but you don't lift up your voice and weep.
Yeah, that's a significant difference, I would say.
Yeah,
it's weird that he didn't bold that part, because I mean that's the part that should be bold. And he lifted his voice and wept. Like,
yeah.
it's kind of important.
And what else is left out in this is that Jacob stayed with Laban and the family for a month.
Right.
That was the time frame that they were meant to be staying there. So over this month, they never discussed marriage apart from this one time that's discussing it, that is referencing.
Sure, I buy that. Totally buy that. We're just gonna leave it here, leave it hanging, and then we'll talk about sheep the rest of the time.
I mean, there must be Welsh or something, I don't know.
Or Scottish.
Yeah. I believe the Kiwis have an affinity as well.
That's not bad at all. I'm terrible. I quit. Maybe Hitchens was right. Hitchens was right, y'all. I'm not funny. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no way he stayed there a month and they didn't have, like, negotiations about this wedding. There's no way.
The last negotiation between the British monarchy for, I believe it was Diana and Charles, that lasted 7 months.
Oh, wow.
The Camilla one, I believe, was relatively quick because there was a need to get it out in the open and done and dusted and swept under the rug as quick as possible. Because obviously Camilla's divorced, which is a huge taboo. So it just needs to get done and dusted. So for something like that, bearing in mind that I believe Jacob is the heir to Isaac, would hold significance.
Definitely. There's a lot to talk about, and not just, okay, well, I'm going to give you my wife's hand. There's a lot of, but you have to do this, and, there's a lot of negotiations going on, because these aren't just, you don't write about just, Betty Jean and Joe Bob. You're writing about people that are prominent in the area, that hold significant influence in terms of the economy, the religion, the traditions. So, yeah, definitely a lot to talk about during this month that they're there.
Yeah, I mean, it's insinuating that Laban holds a significant head of sheep as well. It's calling it a full flock. It's not just saying it has 5 sheep, which you would if it was small.
Yeah. Sounds like Laban's got some capital.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you go on further through this chapter, as you mentioned, Jacob married the elder daughter, which is Leah. And Laban says, "Oh no, you get Leah. You've got no choice."
Right.
And then Jacob works for a further 7 years to get Rachel's hand in marriage.
Yes.
And then there's a shed load of Rachel being barren, then Leah giving, I think it's 3 or 4 sons.
Something like that. I don't remember.
I mean, that part's irrelevant, but it's, again, it's Jacob that has no choice of who he marries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is what I was jumping the gun earlier.
Oh, no, you were right, though.
He wanted Rachel, right? And he didn't have a choice. It was the father who basically tricked him into working for him, right? And gave him the older daughter's hand. And they're like, oh, well, guess you gotta work longer for me. Whoops.
Yeah.
Little rascal.
The author tries to use 2 Corinthians 13:12, which is a few books further on in the Bible. So how would Jacob know of something that's not been said yet? It says, greet one another with a holy kiss.
It's magic.
Yeah.
They're all psychic. They were psychic, and that's just, you don't need an explanation for it.
Yeah, it's like Noah knowing what's a clean and a filthy animal before Leviticus.
Yeah, exactly. And see, like, we have to take this author at their word, because this author obviously knows exactly what was going on in the minds of people a long time ago, and is definitely not coming to a preconceived conclusion and then, trying to find cherry pick ways of confirming that. There's no way that that's happening. There's no way. They're psychic. They know.
I mean, even when the Bible tells them exactly what they were thinking, they still believe they know better. Mm-hmm. Genesis 29:18-20, which they quote, even proves that what they were thinking. It says, I quote, and Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. And Laban said, it is better that I give thee than that I should give her to another man. Abide with me. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days, for the love he had to her.
Aww.
So this is the feeling he had during the time of the 7 year servitude. How can that not be a love? It doesn't say Rachel loves him, but I think it would be reasonable to assume that they had some kind of an affection.
Perhaps. I mean, we don't really hear from the women much in the Bible. It's kind of weird. It's almost as if the women aren't considered at all. Which is the point, right? It's the whole point. Is, I guess I'm supposed to be like a cow, right? And this dude is trying to justify how I'm a cow. So, like, to people who often say, well, you need to just give people charity whenever they're making a point. No, I don't. If they're saying that I'm basically something to be owned, like cattle, I have absolutely no charity to offer them.
Why should you?
I don't. I shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, in some respects, I understand what they're saying. You should give some kind of charity. But when someone's saying you are lesser than, then there is no charitable interpretation of that I can see.
If I'm subhuman in any way, and that is the point, then you can fuck off. That's just plain simple.
I mean, is the time that you should give charity is when they say, if it's a basketball game, there should be a group of people that can only play if they are below 6'6", for example. Anyone can play in the upper group, but the lower group should be open to only a select few, because there is generally an advantage for those over 6'6". there is some charity that you can give there. I think it's kind of defeats the object of sports in that respect, but you can understand where they're coming from. But saying nobody over 6'6" can ever play, that's just...
Now, wait a minute. Now, I thought, since we worship the god of egalitarianism, right, that it's supposed to be just everyone's equal. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, their qualifications, whether or not they're better at a certain thing or more athletic. It doesn't matter,
Well, this is true. We've got to cut off the legs of people that are taller to make it equal,
Yeah, we must. That is what we must do.
I'm glad I'm not over 6'6", just under.
See, that's the thing. It's really revealing immediately when you start to read this article what the mindset of this person is. It's a very dichotomous thinker. Whenever you have someone saying, "Okay, well, it's only this way or that way," right? I mean, and that's essentially what this boils down to. Is you have someone who is thinking very dichotomously, and I'm sorry, but that is a cognitive pitfall.
Absolutely. If taking their examples of women being inferior to men, if that wasn't the case, then Marie Curie wouldn't have made the discoveries she did.
True.
As just one example, and that's probably one of the greatest examples I could think of for medical advancements. If it's not her or Alexander Fleming, the two greatest discoveries wouldn't have happened. One by a man, one by a woman. So they are obviously equal, but different at the same time. Different fields, equal attributes towards medicine and sciences in general.
Yeah, definitely. And even during the years where women weren't given credit for, the work that they did, they were still behind the scenes doing things and helping, the men out to figure out, different sciences and medical things. So, yeah, I don't buy the argument. We would never have made it to the moon if it weren't for women doing some really difficult math behind the scenes. That's
absolutely. The first Nobel Prize that Marie Curie got was actually a joint one with her husband, and the Nobel people said if Marie Curie hadn't done the work, her husband wouldn't have got the Nobel Prize. However, if she had done it on her own, she wouldn't have got the prize either, because she was a woman. It wasn't a case of they didn't want to give it her, but he wouldn't have got the recognition in the community because it wouldn't have been taken seriously. People just wouldn't have looked at it.
Wow.
And I think
that's very revealing.
Yeah. They tried to distance themselves, saying it's not us that would have dismissed it. It would have been the community that would have dismissed it. So it wouldn't have come to our attention.
They're not part of the community or anything.
No, of course not.
No. Fake news, okay, believe me.
That's beside the point anyway. I think we've taken his blog out of order here, actually.
Yeah, I mean, he goes on to talk about her personality didn't matter.
That heinous link again.
He just really loves that other article.
I really can't figure out why either.
You're proud of being essentially what it appears to me. I didn't read the article. I offer it no charity, right? But to be a rape apologist and be proud of being a rape apologist is like one of the most disturbing things that I can think of right now. I just can't even. How so whoever wrote this, you had to have been ashamed. First of all, you didn't put your name, right? You had to have been ashamed, and you have good reason to be ashamed because you're a piece of shit. That is just...
Absolutely.
That's my thoughts.
It's got to be an incel. It's MGTOW, incel, all them heinous people that hate not only women but themselves as well.
Yeah, it's somebody who is in a position that they feel like they deserve to get the WAP, I guess. Well, it wouldn't be WAP if they were just taking it. But it's like you are not entitled to someone else's body, dude. You're not entitled to it. Sorry, but you gotta be like, a person of principle and somebody who is who carries traits that are attractive to the opposite sex. And from this article here, it doesn't seem like you have much. Okay, but there is good news, Mr. Incel dude, bro. You can change, but you have to want to, and you have to first of all set aside this whole rape apology nonsense that you're going down. You have to turn around, go down a different path, one that doesn't say, "Hey, I don't need a woman's consent," and one that maybe, I don't know, respects women in some way, maybe even a little bit. Then maybe you get the WAP. I don't know.
Not only is he disrespecting women, which is the main aim of this, but he's also disrespecting men.
Truth.
I have a partner and I don't want them to be my slave. I don't want them to be my mother. I don't want them to be beholden to me in any way, shape or form. I want it to be mutual and what's the word? Reciprocal?
Yeah, reciprocal. You don't want to be infantilized, right?
Yes.
You don't want to be like, oh, well, he can't do his laundry and cook, He is just not capable. He just can't do it.
I mean, I don't think any decent man, unless it's under a certain set of circumstances, wants to be a master and dominate the partner. In some circumstances, if that's what you want, then just have safe words. But beyond that, there is very little need for it.
Yeah, and if, you are the kind of person that, and I have met some incredibly smart men who would forget to eat. Okay, their brain is not focused on that. So, they kind of needed a partner that would remind them that they need to eat. There are situations like that where it's a mutual thing. Okay, that you uplift one another in a partnership where one person is deficient, the other person picks up the slack and vice versa. It's a equality thing. Oh, there's God equality. But that's a good thing.
It is. And this is the thing, just because, say for example, someone that works from home and wants to get into work, that's what they focus on, they lose track of time. Partner comes home from whatever their job they do. Have you eaten yet? Oh, no. And then they get up to take time away from the workstation and they go cook.
Yeah.
That is almost symbiotic.
Yes.
And just, if I cook, my partner washes. If my partner cooks, I wash.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, it's not always one doing the cooking.
Right.
Generally, not always. I think they've actually cooked more than I have recently. Stop giggling, you bitch.
Uh-oh. Called out.
But there is still some aspects there. Even going to slightly more intimate details, sometimes they'll like to cuddle up to me, whereas sometimes I like to cuddle up to them. This, to an incel, is being a better cook, cuddling up to my partner rather than the other way around.
Oh, what the hell? That is just toxic. That is
Absolutely.
That is basically saying that men are not entitled to their own feelings and thoughts that come naturally to them. I mean, that's so sad. That's sad.
Yeah.
And this is where feminism is often, seen as just, oh, well, you're just trying to uplift women. No, we're trying to uplift men too.
Yeah.
And this is one of the many examples of how the idea does that. So anyway, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, it's exactly what I was going on. But then again, I will expand on that. Feminism to me, bear in mind it doesn't directly affect me in the traditional sense. It's not me losing any form of rights or liberties. It's a case of women are also getting the same rights and liberties that I currently have. And articles like this one are designed to roll back them rights and liberties.
Agreed. And if you're looking at just finances alone, let's just talk finance, right? Let's talk about incomes, right? So if you have two people working and they're making the same amount of money, for the amount of work that they put in, that's more income for the couple, for the family unit. So what's the problem? Like, when it comes to traditionalists, there's a lot of faults with the traditional, the wife stays at home, et cetera, so forth. Because if you recall, during World War II, the women were what kept the economy going. Yeah. They even not only kept the economy going, but they also were making the supplies for the troops.
Going one step further, they were also delivering the planes to the airfields that were defending Britain.
Exactly.
There is instances when they were being delivered, the Germans had attacked at that time in the early stages of the Battle of Britain, and these women had to fight off the Luftwaffe in delivering these planes.
And talk about brave.
It's actually given the first couple of times when they were delivering them, they were unarmed. So they had to evade them and get into an area where they could be defended by anti-aircraft artillery. And then when they started arming them, they were actually better shots than many of the men because they were better trained, because they weren't shot down in the droves that the men were. So they had more experience in the air generally and air combat.
Wow, that's fascinating. I did not know that.
There was an American lady, African American, and she is actually the ace of Battle of Britain, of something like 120 confirmed kills.
Wow, that is impressive. Amazing. See, y'all, we need equality. Like, it helps everyone. It's just
absolutely
all there is to it. Like, I don't know why anybody would want to obstruct that other than for their own purposes, for their own insecurities, let's just say, to put it in a way that's not mean. Inadequacies.
You talk about insecurities and inadequacies. In the UK, we've got a relatively robust social safety net. And it's also a tradition for women to still remain home with any newborn children and up till school age. And they brought in child tax credits and working families tax credits. The child tax credits started off with a gyro book that you took to the post office, cashed, and the woman could go off and do the shopping. And this was the idea and what have you. However, when it all went online and the government paid you direct into your bank, working tax credit had to go to the person who was earning a wage and was paid through your wages. They realised that this wasn't working, so they said, right, we'll pay it to whoever you nominate. And all these men complained, well, now my woman's going to have money. She could leave me.
Oh my
That's the
God.
first thing they went to. So they weren't bothered about then having to give over the money, which made them feel like a man. And no, this is my income. And they had to give over just this one little bit of control that they had. And the first thing they felt was, my wife's going to leave me. How much of an arsehole have you got to be for that to be your first thought? You've got to know you are an arsehole.
Maybe treat your woman better, and you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I'll go with that theory.
Yeah. Maybe. Golly, is it really that difficult to not be an asshole to your partner? Is it really? I mean,
without making excuses, these are people that were raised during the 70s, 80s, 90s. So they had that mentality from back then. And the mentality of a society in the UK is really, really, really slow. And then once something happens, it sparks off a huge change, and then it slows down again.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the same anywhere else, but that's the only thing I can think of.
You give an inch, they take a mile. Generationally speaking, that does tend to happen. And whenever you have a little bit of progress that goes on, you have people like this author, this blog, just completely outraged and crying and throwing a fit because I guess rape is frowned upon. I can't even.
Well, we might get into
that. Like, it's just that he keeps plugging the consent thing, and it just really bugs the shit out of me. I'm sorry. It just...
yeah. How old would you say he is?
Can't be over 25. Because there's absolutely no sense of reasoning, and there's no brakes on this brain here.
See, I put him as a boomer. It's sort of like 50s or 60s.
You think so?
I'm thinking as a contemporary of Trump.
Could be. Could be. It would explain a lot.
The phrasings that they're using aren't relatively modern. It's very traditionalist, the way they write. I would say they're ordering
things like easy on the eyes. Yeah. It's kind of like a tall drink of water, kind of.
Yeah. It's like here, today, marriage, companionship, and sexual relations all centre on the feelings of women. God created man for his glory and created woman for man, as 1 Corinthians clearly states. Yet we have turned to the creation order upside down. I don't think someone of our age or younger would say that.
Maybe not. I mean, there was this young YouTuber that I used to know who would say things similar. And And it really what it is it's parroting of things that they heard as opposed to their own idea. But I mean, you could have a point. It could be it could be a boomer. Good.
Mm. But as you say, it could be someone that's learnt from a boomer.
Yeah.
In fact, now you come to mention it, there is a young kid, 15, I think he is in the NIFB chapter. Is doing the rounds on YouTube at the minute, modern day debates and the rest of it. And he does actually use this kind of language coming through that mentality, because obviously his parents are NIFB pastors and all the rest of it. And that is his homeschooled as well. So that is his entire world. I suppose it's the same as going up to what do they call them? Amish people. It's the same kind of scenario there, I would imagine.
Definitely. I mean, we, as kids, we learn from our parents through mirroring what they do.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's just kind of the feeling that I get from it. I could be wrong. I'm not psychic, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and if you're in one of the fundamentalist groups, also you do marry young.
Yes.
Usually. So you could still retain some of these ideas of what biblical marriage is, biblical gender roles, and all the rest of it.
Definitely. And you got to hurry up and get busy on that quiverful, right? You got to have, 20 kids or whatever, which, by the way, is not healthy for the woman, but who cares?
Oh, the kids.
She's a cow. She's a cow, and I need kids because God, I guess.
Yep. It's not healthy on the children either.
No, it's definitely not.
Ireland and parts of the rest of the UK have had huge genetic problems because the amount of kids people are having, especially in the Catholic areas. As Monty Python kind of points out in The Meaning of Life. And the genetic errors have mostly rectified themselves with smaller and smaller families as generations have gone on. But most monarchies in Europe are screwed because of Queen Victoria.
Yeah.
So, anyway, where are we? Right. Finally, an honest statement. A more controversial form of forced marriage. While some Christians can wrap their heads around the forced marriages stories I just mentioned, the following, there is another type of forced marriage the Bible speaks of, and it actually specifically allows and regulates. I'm not going to read the passage. We know which one it is. If a woman is taken in battle, you can take her as your wife. However, you have to allow her time to mourn, which actually isn't in the passage here. This passage, when taken in full, is in 3 or 4 parts. The first part says, get everyone to battle in front of the city and then start sending people home. It then says to go offer terms to the place that you're besieging and then threaten them with murder, rape, theft, and all sorts of other heinous things. And then it strangely goes into don't cut the trees down because they're going to feed you during the siege. This is standard battle plan. It has been for thousands of years. Yeah. It's psychological. It's a show of force initially, and then a show of confidence by sending people home. The idea is people will just surrender to the invading force.
Right.
So I don't understand why he's used this one. I really can't figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
Well, that was Deuteronomy 20. In Deuteronomy 21 goes then, where thou goest forth to war against thine enemy, and the Lord thy God hath delivered them into thine hands, and thou hast taken them captive, and seest among the captives a beautiful woman, and hast desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to thy wife. And then thou shalt bring her home to thine house, shave her, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails. What's pare her nails? Is it cotton?
I think it's just cutting. I hope it's not just taking off your nails completely.
Oh, unless my history of cosmetics is completely whack, and they've had fake acrylic nails since early biblical times, and they've got to take the acrylics off.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know enough about cosmetics, to be honest. I just don't. I'm supposed to, right? But I don't.
Well, I don't think acrylics were invented back then.
Maybe they had some kind of polish or something that they used.
Maybe.
No idea.
Yeah, and then
the idea behind it remains.
Yeah. Then she shall put the remnant of captivity from off of her, and shall remain in thine house, and bewail her father and mother for a full month. After that she shall go into her, and be her husband, and she shall be thy wife. And then it says, you do this because you've humbled her, but you aren't allowed to sell her because you haven't bought her. This is saying, let Stockholm Syndrome set in, surely.
Yeah. Basically. And the thou hast humbled her sounds really rapey. And it also it kind of has this feel of, well, you spoiled the goods, so you can't sell her, kind of. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I'm getting it.
That's actually a good point that I'd not fully considered. I mean, there was the idea that if you weren't a virgin and you didn't have a father to look out for you, how were you meant to find another husband?
Yeah.
Because
and if you
virginity, that purity culture was prevalent.
Yeah, and it had to do with heirs, right? So if you spoiled her or humbled her or whatever, and then sold her, how would the person who bought her know that the kid was his or yours? Essentially. Yep. Gross, but probably what's going on.
Yeah. Well,
and it's not the will of the Lord. This is just customary stuff.
Yeah, but when it comes to buying and selling of slaves, if you go back to Leviticus, if you had an indentured servant, you couldn't sell them either. So in this instance, the debt is her life. You spared her life because she was a captive of war. If no one took the captives, then they were killed or taken into slavery in general for general housework. But if you slept with an indentured servant, then they could be released anytime and you couldn't sell them.
Huh.
That's my interpretation, but yeah.
That's a good point. That's interesting. I would have never thought of that. But yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I've got to admit that's it's my interpretation of what the writing says, but that's not guaranteed to be true. Yeah, because that's also only for Israelites, whereas these are from your enemies, which insinuates they're not Israelites.
Yeah.
So.
Goodness. I'm glad we don't live back then. I'd have been dead.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have put up with me.
Would you like to go into this one about what happens to a victim?
Mm.
That's
If we must, we can.
To be honest, we can skip it over in a few short sentences.
Okay. Let's do that.
These bastards killed a victim for being a victim. The second one, they actually believed the victim. And the third one, they tortured the victim for the rest of her life.
Terrible.
Yep. So,
terrible
conclusion.
Stuff.
I personally don't particularly like that passage, just because I get really angry, which I don't like particularly doing.
Yeah.
I do like one passage, and it's actually from the New Testament, which that passage is used to confirm why they were going to do it, and that is he who is without sin cast the first stone. Jesus said it to the angry mob because a lady's been found to be having sex out of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually stands up for the people in the first part of that passage.
Yep.
So, yeah.
It's kind of interesting how there's a lot of contradiction. It's almost as if you have one generational standard and then a different one.
Oh, who'd have thought
like progress. Progress, maybe? More people, more populace, more, less reliance upon this whole warrior class thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
I just wish sometimes that society moved as quick as morality did. One of in the UK, Churchill is serenaded as being the perfect man, the wartime hero who did nothing really. He didn't actually invent anything. He didn't develop any structures. Whereas you've got people like Montgomery who developed tank warfare for the British Army. And you've got Alan Turing, the guy that cracked the Enigma code. And then within 10 years of the war ending, he was convicted of, I think it was impropriety or something like that they called it, because he was gay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Churchill was a raging homophobe, misogynist, absolute disgusting racist.
Shit. Yeah.
There is someone I relatively grew up with who is of mixed race. And we're having this argument when the statues were being pulled down. And I says, do you know if Churchill got his own way, it would be illegal for you to exist? Churchill did not agree with crossing the bloodlines. His words.
Oh my God.
No, he didn't. I pulled up the citation. Oh, he was still a great man. How?
Maybe I'm going to be an optimist here, and I'm going to give benefit of the doubt, even though I'm probably wrong. But maybe they're sticking to their guns because it hasn't sunk in yet. Or maybe it was backfire effect.
Well, to be honest with you, he is 10 to 15 years younger than me.
Yeah.
He would be somewhere in the region of 22 now.
Oh, that's young.
Yeah, he's still got this idealistic notion that anybody that did anything of note during World War II is a hero. Unless they weren't. So this notion that Churchill is the wartime hero, which arguably was a gift, he got the country riled up and he brought us all together. But then he was immediately voted out of office at the end of World War II. In 1946, he lost the general election in 1946. It wasn't until I think it was 52 that he was voted back in. But
well, at least he kept the whole cognac thing going. I mean, that's a big market now.
Yeah,
it's important.
Yeah. Oh God.
Boy.
And he made smoking cigars fashionable again.
Yeah. Joy. So much emphysema, so little time.
Yeah.
Literally. When you have emphysema. Anyway. Well, I mean, the thing about it is, like, yeah, he was able to bring people together, but 9/11 did too.
Yeah. Unfortunately, brought them together in the wrong direction, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, bringing people together is easy when you're during wartime. It's easy. Patriotism, It's easy.
How do you think the post 9/11 America would have looked if Al Gore had won the election?
Oh, well, I don't think we would have seen Al Gore standing there like a goofball in front of a mission accomplished sign. And I don't think that I don't think we would have been at war with Iraq, really. I don't think
I can believe Iraq, yeah.
Maybe Afghanistan, Syria. Syria was an up and coming problem, right, during that time. So it probably would have been some things going on there, but I don't think Iraq would have been. I don't think that would have happened.
I think if Iraq could have been anything, it'd have been a silent change of regime.
Yeah?
Yeah, from within, with support of America. Saddam Hussein wasn't a fan awful. Within America, yeah.
He was a terrible person. He was a tyrant to his country, and I have shed absolutely zero tears over his death. Just saying.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Absolute terrifying person.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
I think the difference between the tactics used by Republican Democrats over decades, Democrats have been generally sneakier, and Republicans have been more in your face. Yeah,
and the in-your-face bull in a china shop is not. It's not good.
No.
It's not a strategy for winning any kind of favor with the world.
I've got a prime example for you, actually.
Yeah?
So, is it Soleimani, the Iranian general?
Yeah, Soleimani.
Yep, so Trump, hellfire missiles, blow everything up that you see. Republican.
Yeah.
Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. SEAL Team 6, straight in, straight out, slit his throat over sea and dump him.
Yep.
Obama.
Yep.
I think that's an accurate representation of the two.
That's a very good way of putting it. Yes. But I mean, it really skirts the line either way, doesn't it?
Well, both are illegal in the international community because bin Laden was in Pakistan, so America had a military involvement on foreign soil. And Soleimani had diplomatic clearance in Iraq. So it's, again, a violation of international law there. So...
Yeah, Obama wasn't squeaky clean, I'll tell you that.
Oh, no.
Not in any sense of the word.
I'm not a lover after everything I've learned about Obama. of quite a lot of what he did. Compared to what you've got now and what preceded him, he is still relatively squeaky. Relatively.
Yeah. I mean, what you have is drone strikes versus the mother of all bombs. I mean, that's basically the difference. And
yeah,
unfortunately, the drone strikes and everything, bombing a hospital under Obama, which, holy crap. But I mean,
and people actually defend that because there was people on the roof. There were insurgents on the roof firing, which is fine, fair enough. That's not a good thing. However, instead of sending a laser or GPS guided missile, why not just attach a Bren gun and wipe out the roof?
Yeah.
Why kill the insurgents rather than the hospital?
Good question. One for the ages.
Can't justify that to myself.
I can't imagine what the history books are going to read like later on as my grandchildren are learning about some of the stuff.
We already know. We already know.
Yeah.
So you had 6 million Jewish people killed in concentration camps. You had somewhere in the region of 1.5 million people of colour killed in concentration camps, gypsies or travellers, whichever term they prefer, because each sector's different.
Romas.
All these people, Romas, all these people killed in concentration camps. Somewhere totaling close to 10 million. In 2 bombs, Nagasaki and Hiroshima killed almost half that over the coming years. And that's actually praised as a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a mixed bag, right? You got some people that think that was a good thing. The war ended, yay! How many lives were saved then? But at the same time, we unleashed one of the most deadly and scary eras of our time with the Cold War, and it is still a problem.
What gets me is in February of 1946, the official records were changed because the bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima in the official documents were called the final solution to the war.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God. No! Ixnay on that.
Yeah, I mean, at that time, it wasn't the rest of the world, because these were documents from like 1943. So the rest of the world weren't fully aware of what was going on in Germany, Austria, and Hungary, Poland, and all the rest of it. So it's not a case of that, but the correlation between the two has damning implications.
Yeah, especially if you're a consequentialist, which is someone who looks at the morality of a circumstance, not by the intent, but the outcome of what occurred. Wow, that's just, jeez.
Yeah, but the Germans thought this will end the problem of this group of people, whereas the Americans, this will be the end of the problem of the war. Whereas they both kind of thought it was the same thing. The Germans thought the problem was the Jewish people that was causing the war. Never mind, Hitler was a psychopathic piece of shit himself.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, how psychopathic is it to drop a bomb on a city filled with people, with children, to a bomb that results in years upon years of radiation and horror? And we're not even going to talk about Vietnam. What happened there?
Yeah, that's one I'm not overly familiar with, I've got to be honest with you. But coming back to Nagasaki and Hiroshima, one of the guy that dropped the bomb looked and says, "This looks hardly damaged at all." and that's because those two cities were saved from general bombardment so they could see the damage. So you had people fleeing from other cities into Nagasaki and Hiroshima because they were havens, they hadn't been touched.
Yeah.
So refugees also got hit as well.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I just,
God
there are no
save America.
words. Ah, yeah, the greatest country. Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the sentiment, too, at the time was we had Pearl Harbor. And, oh, we would go get them. We would go get them, and they won't know what hit them. Well, that was true. They didn't know what hit them until it hit them. And there's still a lot of consequences to that. Genetically. And when it comes to the environment, it's just, oh my God. But yeah, conclusion, right?
Yeah.
This is a hell of a conclusion. And I mean, at least the dude is being honest, I guess. At least, you know, he's not scared to be a complete asshole.
Well, you say that, but I don't think it's completely honest. Just in the first line, the Bible does not frown upon forced marriage or forced sex within marriage. What that should read as, the Bible does not frown upon forced marriage or rape within marriage.
True. I'll give you that one. Yeah. And a lot of the framing was dishonest, as I mentioned before. But
absolutely,
it's very clear. It's very clear what this person's agenda is, and yeah, they're a disgusting piece of shit. So, in all ethical frameworks, this is absolute garbage.
Yep.
There is no moral framework, ethical framework in which you can say that this is good, this is moral. There's just not.
Yeah. I wrote in my notes, the Bible doesn't frown upon forced marriage or rape within marriage. This is because the authors were immoral incel men who wanted to control women and use belief in a God to force it.
Yep. Truth. It's all about control.
I'm sure it's the same with you and Maddie, but with me and my partner, if I don't want to have sex, my partner doesn't force it on me, and if my partner doesn't want to have sex, I don't force it upon them, and that's just respect.
Yeah.
I can't think of any other way to phrase it to show that it's not being cuckold or being a beta.
Being decent, being a decent human being. Yeah.
I don't want that on my conscience that I've forced it upon someone.
Right.
That's just a selfish aspect of it.
True.
But it's also, when you're with someone, you want to meant to make them happy, not sad or hurt or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and then, you know, you don't have to worry about them leaving you because they have money. Jesus.
Yeah.
That's sad.
I'm almost tempted to look up through this blog archive to see if there's any mention of divorce and what their opinions are on that.
Oh, God. Do you really want to know?
Not really. You've got
to have some sense of self-preservation in there. There's got to be. Do you value your sanity at all?
No.
No.
In 2020, no.
That's true. That's fair. I'll give you that one.
I mean, I've sat through 2 PragerU videos when that's already been released, responding to Dave Rubin, I've sat through a Eric Hovind video and responded to that. The other PragerU video I'm going to be responding to about toxic masculinity as it happens.
Oh boy.
So
Have fun.
yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Hey, you didn't have to suffer through this one alone, though. So
This
yay.
is true. I did have to. I did have to share the pain.
Well, I appreciate the suffering, I guess. No, seriously, I do appreciate working with you. This has been. I mean, we've had a good conversation. This blog is terrible, but
Yep.
we've had good conversation, so I appreciate that.
Yep. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure having you and talking to you like this, and actually going off on the tangents to save sanity, as you say.
Yeah.
But we have to come back to reality, unfortunately.
Yeah,
And
I've got to make dinner here pretty soon.
Well, now it's time for you to shill yourself and tell everyone where they can find you and what you do.
Well, I am Mrs. Snarky. I have a YouTube channel. Missus Snarky is the name, of course. And you can find me on Twitter at Missus Snarky. A lot of times I talk about politics, philosophy, religion, sociology, just things I find interesting, psychological stuff. I also do art, which I don't know if that's going to be. I've got art back there, but yeah, that's me. You can find my art on Redbubble and also on Teespring under Mrs. Snarky Store if you want to look that up. But yeah, I do have videos.
Links will be in the description for it.
I haven't made videos in a while because I've injured myself pretty bad. I've been in a lot of pain and brain fog, and I just, it's not like you just get in front of a camera and you just say things. Some people might make videos that way, but I don't. I do research and add citations, and there's a whole lot of that goes into the process. I just have not felt up to it, and 2020 has been a complete bitch. So yeah, hopefully I'll get back to that soon, hopefully. But in the meantime, I do have things that you can watch there. So there's my shilling.
It gives people time to check out your back catalogue before you start bringing out the new stuff.
Yeah, I've got some silly stuff too. So yay! Gotta break up the monotony. And I still want a bunny, Maddie.
Yeah, when you do start following Missus Snarky on Twitter, the first tweet that you've got to send is tag Missus Snarky and objectively, is it objectively subjective or is it
Godless Iwan?
And send the.
Let me see. It's Godless Iwan, I think.
You've got to tag the pair of them and with the hashtag #BunBun for Snarky.
Yeah. That's right. At Godless Iwan. And I need a bunny. And if you want to put a bunny gif in there, that would make me very happy. Just send me your bunnies. If it's a picture, I will be happy with it.
All right. Well, thank you for being on, and I'll have all your links in the description of the video. The video.
Alrighty.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.